everybody, Gisele Grenier here. In this video tutorial, I'm pulling from the questions you guys have been sending me. The question today is, well, the comment she sent me is, I try to use really dark brown when painting animals and wildlife in the forest, but it always looks so dull and boring. I'm wasting so much paint. Can you help me? All right, so thank you for the question. And that's a pretty open-ended question because can I help you? Well, it all depends. So when you're using brown, so I'm thinking, if you, let me just pull some of these out. If you use like colors like burnt umber and raw umber, they're single pigment colors. So, you can always add colors to them. So what I'm going to do is I have to assume what you're painting because you didn't tell me exactly like the situation of what you're painting. Are you painting animals in an indoor setting, an outdoor setting? And you said wildlife in the forest, inside the forest or like in a field. So what I'm going to assume is, let's say, painting an animal just outside in the grass. So we'll just say that. And for that example, what you could look at is when you're painting an animal. So let's say you're painting a deer or whatever animal that's brown. When the animal is in an area, okay, so you've got, let's just take white paint. If you put white paint here and you put it inside, in this situation, it looks white. If you take that white paint and this bottle and put it into a field of grass, the light's going to reflect off the grass and cast a green translucent tint onto the white paint. Light reflects off surrounding areas. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work an experiment through creating some brownish colors that lean a little bit more towards green. All right. So I'm going to be doing it with using the two different brands, the Traditions and the Media Fluid acrylics, because the transparency of paint also makes a difference as to how you color mix. So if you're going to be using, so for the Decor Traditions paints, they're the professional paints. They're really heavy in pigment and they're much thicker in consistency. Whereas the Media Fluid acrylics are the same quality of paint, the same high pigments, but they're much thinner in consistency, which means they're more semi-transparent for mixed media and more opaque. But each paint has its own properties, and that's where the color index information on the back, and it tells you the opacity. So paint that's transparent may or may not be weaker when it comes to mixing. And in that case, I know this is a lot of talk, but it's important that you know, if you were to take something like Hansa Yellow Light, which is semi-transparent, it's not going to be as strong as yellow oxide when it comes to mixing because opaque paints are stronger. In the same respect, Ultramarine Blue is weaker in tinting, weaker when it's mixed, whereas Phthalo Blue is super powerful when mixing, even though it's transparent. So it's important to know how the paints react when it comes to their transparencies. All right, so let's put these over here. Oh, and I'll just get this one. So to do this experiment, all I'm going to do is just use cheap old sketching paper. And really, if it's at all possible, get yourself a journal or a 3-ring binder where you can put all your mixes in there. That way, this is the thick gesso, shoot. That way you can have a record of what you're doing. So I'm putting gesso down. Now this is going to be an actual education video for beginners. To answer the question, it's going to be a little bit longer. So if you're not interested in color mixing, then click the back button. I won't be offended. But if you want to learn about how to mix these colors, then continue watching. Now, the gesso. Do you need to use gesso when doing the color mixing? Yes, you do. The reason why is if I were to do this color mixing straight on raw paper, the paint is going to sink inside the paper and it's going to affect how the color is going to appear. So use gesso, and if you don't have gesso, use white paint. You want to put that barrier layer so paint doesn't sink inside the paper. And I am going to change this in the next video because this gesso is too thick. Which is not a bad thing, but right now I just want to get something down there. All right. Leave that. And what I think I may do, depending on the results of this mix, I may do a couple more separate videos to show different mixes for these brown colors. And I think that's probably one of the most common questions that I get is, how do you mix brown? Oh, that's such a lovely sound. Is how to mix brown. And I think because, you know, when people think of brown, they just think of brown. Well, brown is never just brown. It's, you know, brown that leans towards red, brown that leans towards green, you know, brown that leans towards yellow. There's all these different types of browns. Raw umber, depending on, you know, the manufacturer. Oh, don't tell me this bottle's dried up. Oh. That's 2 now. Okay, I'm going to have to figure out what's going on there. Well, I'm stuck now, so I'm just going to I'll just use some gesso. What the heck was I saying? What was I saying? Oh yeah, raw umber. Raw umber, depending on who you get it from, leans a bit more towards green. And, you know, so it's important to know. Now, for those of you that are new to the channel or new to any of my teaching methods, I've got a playlist for color mixing in the YouTube channel. I also have it in my private Facebook group as a complete course, which is 100% free. So you're more than welcome to check that out, and all the information is going to be in the description below. Let's see. Okay, so let's get that. Okay, so what I'm using for these mixtures is yellow oxide ultramarine blue, okay, for the mixtures for brown. And you think, well, yellow and blue make green. Yeah, but it's important to know, again, the properties of color. Again, it all goes, if you're wanting to learn how to get a certain color, you have to know a bit about color theory. There's no way around it. There's no shortcuts or cheat sheets or all that stuff. You have to know the absolute basics. And that's where the playlist and the free course is available for you. Ultramarine blue is a blue that leans towards purple. Okay, leans towards violet. And when you look at where the colors sit on the color wheel, blue-violet is opposite of yellow-orange, okay, which yellow oxide is more of a yellowy orange. So they're complementary to each other on the color wheel, which means they're going to dull each other down. So let's work with that, and you're going to actually see it. Now, if you've got yellow oxide, you've got ultramarine blue, please try this exercise. Seeing it on screen is one thing, but actually doing it is another. That's not really dry yet. Let me just quickly dry this. And if possible, gesso a whole bunch of pages ahead of time, so you're not having to wait for it to dry one at a time. Do it in batches, that way it's ready to go. Alrighty. Always using a clean brush for this. So if I take my yellow oxide and I'm going to put it right there. And I'm going to do the traditions first. So I should have gessoed everywhere. So the traditions, and then the Deco Art Media Fluid Acrylics, only because it's so long. All right. So there's the yellow oxide. Then from there, what you want to do is add a little bit of ultramarine blue in some stages. And then you're going to start seeing things happening with the colors. So now I'm going to take my dirty brush, I'm going to dip it into a little bit of blue and go right here. And it's not enough. Not enough. You want to try to make this gradual. There we go. So you can already see that it is becoming dull and it is turning more into brown. Now we'll take that mixture again, add a little bit more blue. Not quite enough blue. Add dark to light, that way you're not going to be having to make up so much paint. Look at that. That definitely has a green tint to it, but it is turning more brown. Let's make up more. Okay, a bit more blue. Okay, so that's close to what was there already. Let's add more blue. I'm gonna add a bigger chunk now. There we go. Let's see if I can tilt that. So you can see it looks green, right? It looks a bit green. So I think, well, I want to paint brown. Why am I painting green? Well, you're not per se painting green. If you think of an animal in grass, remember that reflected light we were talking about? You have to keep that in mind, that reflected light. So you can use this not as the whole color, but as the base, and then you can put your highlights on top of that. Let me add a big chunk of blue now. And basically, when you do the chart this way, if you try to do about maybe 10, your last color, which will never be the pure blue because you've got the yellow in there, you would have to go forever and ever. You're going to end up at the last color being ultramarine blue. So let's add a big chunk here. There we go. So you can think of a base color being right around here somewhere. Then as you add some highlights, you can add the highlights, with these colors here. Then of course you can always add white. So in speaking of white, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of white just to show you the true underlying color. Look at that. That's a beautiful gray. Wipe my brush. Now I'm going to go back into a bit more yellow. Add a bit of white. And that's probably right around here somewhere. There's a beautiful tan. But all these browns, these brownish colors, all have that slight tint of the blue, the green, and then the yellow. So by working just with the two colors, the yellow oxide and the ultramarine blue, you get that range of mixes, and then by adding white, you lighten those values to create those additional highlight colors. Let's add a bit more yellow oxide. Let's add a bit more white. And all these colors will go together beautifully because they're only made with two colors, yellow oxide and blue. Look at that. Isn't that really pretty? Let's add more white to that and add a bit more yellow oxide. So now I'm going the other way around. Look at that. So these make for really nice highlight colors. All right, so what do you do now when you want to make it dark? Well, typically, we could use just carbon black right out of the tube. You don't really need to use black per se, like out of the bottle, because I find that black, that even further dulls down the colors. I want to introduce, oh, I can't reach it. Oops. I forgot to bring it out. I think you guys know what color I'm going for. My base for making a chromatic black is ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. Why didn't we use burnt sienna to make the mix? Well, that's going to be for another video. And I think I'm just going to make this page the traditions, and I'll make another page with the fluid acrylics. And make sure you shake my yellow oxide. I didn't shake it. It's the binder is separating from the paint. Oh, okay. So now with the ultramarine blue and burnt sienna, I'm going to start with an equal mixture. And this is what I like to use to make my chromatic black. But depending on the ratio that you use, okay, so now we have kind of browny colors, and now they're drying to really looking green. So your animal is a brown animal in grass, so you have that reflected light coming in. Well, we need to get something to neutralize everything, the actual base of the brown. And with these two colors, let's get some white in there. So this is very much a gray that leans a little bit more towards blue. So this is how I make my chromatic black, and I will adjust this. If I want it to be more blue, I'll add more blue to the mixture, which then makes it more like a Payne's gray. Or I can add more burnt sienna to it, going the other way, and it'll look like more of a burnt umber. Okay. If we're wanting to work with dark browns, I want it to be more of a brown, right? So I'm going to add more brown, less blue. Let's get a bit of white in there. There we go. And I'm thinking that probably isn't quite dark enough. Now I've got some white in my brush now. There we go. That's the color I'm going for. So it was probably, I would say, 1 part ultramarine blue and 1.5 parts of burnt sienna. Try not to work the formulas that way, because depending on how you load your brush or whatever, we're not using measuring spoons, eyeball it in your own lighting. Okay? That's another thing, the lighting that you're working in. When you're doing very precise color mixing, I don't like doing precise mixing like to that degree. Try to paint it under, well, no, you can't try. You have to do it under the same lighting conditions. So I've got a window right here, but I've got drapes covering it. If I were to replicate this exact thing, let's say at 8 o'clock tonight, the color is going to look different because I don't have that extra light coming in the window. So that's why I close the drapes. That way I don't have what I have right here. The same lighting will be the same now at 8 o'clock, and I don't have any outside light coming in. But if I were to redirect my lights, the colors are going to change again. So when you're doing precise mixing for an actual painting session, let's say of a person, like a portrait, make sure your lighting conditions don't change. All right. So you can start off then. Let's go over here. Let me make a bit more. A bit more blue. Got too much water in my brush. And that's going to affect how you do your painting as well. And burnt sienna, although being more, now is that one? Yeah, that's opaque, whereas the fluid acrylics is semi-transparent, and then the ultramarine blue and deco art is semi-transparent in the traditions, and it says semi-transparent in the fluid acrylics. It's more transparent in the fluid acrylics. So when you have your really dark brown, by mixing different colors, it's much richer. It's not so flat. Then you can take, something, one of these colors here, just to lighten it up a little bit. Again, there's a little bit of white in here to make it easier for you to see. And then you've got these beautiful hues, which have a slight tint of green in them to get that reflective light in there. Okay, then we can take, let's say, even this one here. Look at that. Now this here, I would actually put another layer on there because I had too much water in my brush. You can see the paper coming through. And then if I wanted to just, put a little bit of a blue. So let's say, the animal is next to, let's say, a tree. You can gray it down a little bit for a bit of a deeper shadow. Okay. And let's say even a little bit darker. Let's go back, get a bit more blue in there. I'm working everything now with a dirty brush. Whoops. There we go. Look at that. So you can use yellow oxide with the blue to get that hint of green, that green cast on there. So with the animal legs, you know, you can have a little bit more on where this, if the sun's coming, this is the animal, and the sun's coming this way, right where the grass is, where the legs of the animal, the body, you can make that highlight a little bit more on the green side. But then back here, you're going to have less green because the sun isn't hitting it, so you're going to have a bit more of a shadow. So that shadow can be more on the blue side. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. And let's just take some white to see the true underlying color. I love doing this part because people go, oh. Okay, so you see all the different colors there. So by just choosing the right blue, the right yellow, like this mixture would have been completely different if I had used phthalo blue instead of ultramarine blue. And it also would have been even more different if I would use, let's say, Hansa yellow, whether it's light, medium, or just Hansa yellow, the neutral one. It would have been even more different. This is opaque. Hansa yellow is more transparent. Ultramarine blue leans more towards purple, which is why you're getting the opposites on the color wheel to dull it down. Phthalo blue is a blue that leans towards green, but it's super intense. Okay, so when you're making your colors, when you're making your colors, especially when you're working with brown, you want to experiment. And you know what? A nice brown that you can get is just use your 3 primary colors. But again, with that, you have to decide what you want your 3 primary colors to be. There's all these different ways that you can, you know, choose your colors. Some people, you know, and again, depending on the brand, where my primary colors are phthalo blue, alizarin crimson, and Hansa yellow light, or ultramarine blue, naphthol red, ultramarine blue, naphthol red light, and Hansa yellow medium. So I've got different types of primary colors, but I never really have those carved in stone as primaries because it depends on what I'm painting. Okay, and I've got videos in a playlist on YouTube and in the Facebook group to talk about all this. So you don't need to, we're not going to do a 14-hour video here. All right, so that takes care of this mixture here. Well, what happens now if we're going to be using more transparent paints? Because I don't know what you guys are using. Now, and the other thing is, this is paint where it's got the color index number on the tube or bottle. PBR7, PB29, and PY42. Yeah. PY43 is yellow ochre, and PY43 is yellow oxide. PY42 is yellow. Let me try this again. Yellow oxide is synthetic, it's PY42. Yellow ochre is organic, it's PY43. Holy crap, jeepers creepers. Get it together. So it's, and what I just tell you guys, you know, just, you have to experiment. Just try. You have the idea now of how to make these browns, but just experiment. Just try it. So if you have, oops, that's glued together. So if you have, let's say you only have, let's say the craft paint, well then get something that, you know, that's a thick, you know, an opaque yellow. And usually craft paint has some type of burnt sienna, and most craft paint has some type of ultramarine blue. So it's a blue that leans towards purple, and then some type of brown to neutralize it, and then a yellowy orange that's creamy. To see the true underlying color, just add white to it. Okay? So now let's replicate the same thing now. I've got a coffee calling me. Oh my goodness. It is, I'm not sure where you guys are in the world. It is -17 outside with the wind chill. It is cold. And so let me know wherever you guys are in the world. Just let me know what temperature it is outside. Joe and I are supposed to be in the Bahamas right now. We're supposed to be there for the winters, and with the pandemic, So now we're going to start with, now I didn't gesso this, we're just going to go straight in here. So there's our yellow oxide, and I'm just going to use gesso just to show you the true underlying color. Okay, that's one. And then let's go with the Ultramarine Blue with some gesso. So you can see the true underlying color. See, as I'm mixing this, the blue is sinking into the paper, and I'm going to have to I would have to add, in an actual painting, I would have to add more paint because it's sunk into the paper and it's going to affect the next layer if that layer was transparent. So that's why you should always gesso your paper. And then, excuse me, burnt sienna. All right. There we go. Okay, so look at that beautiful swipe of color there. So now we're going to do the same exercise again. Let's go right over here. Let me just use the whole thing here. And let's pick up a little bit of blue. And then we'll pick up a bit more blue. I'm going to make these ones a little bit more dramatic. A bit more blue. See, it's not taking much for this one, because the yellow oxide, like when we use the traditions, the yellow oxide is opaque. In the fluid acrylics, it's not. It's semi-transparent. So that's why it's not taking much to really give that color a boost. And we'll just keep going. I'm gonna add a bit more of the blue there. Let me just do a real big step here. Another big step. And let's do one more. And then when you keep doing this, eventually you'll have no yellow left. It'll all be the blue. Now let's get some white. You can see the true underlying color. Let's get a bit more white. I can color mix all day long. I absolutely love it because it doesn't matter what you do. You can have the same method all the time and your mixes are going to be different. Because you pick up your paint differently, you measure a little bit differently. One, today you may load more white or more yellow or more blue. See? So it's a very dark color, but as you add more white, you can see this value starting to change. All right, so we've got that. Now we're going to repeat what we did with the other one. So let's now make the chromatic black. Okay, with the blue and the burnt sienna. Fresh paper towel. We're just going to go right in here. Now when I make the mixture, the chromatic black with the traditions, I use a different ratio over the fluid acrylics. Because ultramarine blue in the traditions is semi-transparent and burnt sienna is opaque. In the fluid acrylics, the burnt sienna is semi-transparent, and although the label says that the ultramarine blue is semi-transparent, it's more transparent. So we've got this. Okay, so look at the difference. This one here. See? Much richer. Because I was able to add more blue to this. And let's get some white in there. But when you add the white, you still get that perfect. This is a perfect chromatic black. It's gray. Look at that. It's a gray that leans a bit more towards blue. So we have our really, really dark color now. I can take a little bit. You know what? I really should get a different brush so we can. Oh, I'm going to use my sable. Oh, that's probably a stupid thing to do. So I'm going to add a bit more burnt sienna here. And I get a bit of white in there. So now you can see how it shifted just by adding a tad more burnt sienna. You can see how it shifted a bit more towards brown. So here's that really beautiful, rich, dark brown. We're going to let it dry till we can see what it looks like. And if you're mixing your colors and they look flat, think of, does it look flat because of the finish or flat because it's, let's say, an ugly mixture? If it's flat because of the finish, just varnish it. That'll bring out the color. Or use a paint that's more satin than matte. Okay, so keep that in mind. But if it's a dull mixture itself, like if the mixture looks dull while it's wet, then it's the mixture. Okay, so now we've got that one. So now let me just rinse the other brush. So we have my perfect chromatic black. I've got my dark brown here. Now let's take the mixture now to chromatic black, and we're going to go with, we're going to add a little bit more yellow oxide. I'm going to have to make up a bit more paint. You guys can't see that. Oh, you know what? Look at that. There's a little bit of white in this. There's a bit of white in that. Then I'm going to take a, whoops. A lot of oopses today. Picked up the wrong yellow oxide. I want to make sure that I stick with the brand because to make it consistent. Here we go. So I took this, so my chromatic black, added burnt sienna, my chromatic black, now I added yellow oxide. And now we have that dark brown that has a hint of green in it. All with 3 colors. 3 colors plus white. That's it. So chromatic black, that's your darkest dark. And if you didn't want to color mix that, you can use carbon black like out of the tube. But it's so much better mixing because the whole thing of that comment was that the colors look so dull and boring. So chromatic black, then add a bit more burnt sienna to get that really deep, rich brown. Then take that chromatic black, add a little bit of yellow oxide to get that dark brown that has a slight green tint for the reflective light coming off the grass. Okay, we can add a little bit more white in here, just so you can see even better. There we go. So there you are. Rich browns are something that is, rich browns are something that's, I wouldn't say so much, it's hard to make. It just depends on the type of colors that you have. So in another video, what I'll do is I'll do the same exercise, but I'll use phthalo blue. And then what else is there? There's phthalo blue. What's another color you guys have been commenting about? Cerulean blue. You guys have been really commenting about cerulean blue. Because how do you make cerulean blue? Because it's so expensive. It is. True cerulean blue is a very, very expensive pigment. I have one oil tube that was $75 for cerulean blue, whereas I can make something similar with phthalo blue, a little bit of phthalo green that leans towards blue, and white. And those 3 tubes together add up to $75, whereas cerulean blue just itself is $75. But when you use, anytime you use the phthalo colors, they will last you for frickin' ever. They will last you forever. All right, so just with these 3 colors, we've got our nice deep rich browns, we've got some highlight colors, and then we've got some additional colors that we can use for adding, let's see, highlights in where on the fur where it's closer to the grass for some reflective light. Then we will also have some color in here we can use to add some reflective light where this in the background, like where the sun doesn't hit it directly, but there is still some reflective light. So again, if this is your animal, if the sun's coming this way, you're going to have the brighter reflective light here, but in the back here where the sun's not hitting the animal directly, the light will be hitting the grass here. There still will be some reflective light, but it'll be a little bit darker. All right, hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense. So what to do is, and the lady who put the comment, she didn't put her name. It was just anonymous as the name. Try with your colors. So take your yellow oxide, burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, and try mixing those colors. You know, first make your chromatic black with burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, and then make another mix with that chromatic black plus burnt sienna. Then take your chromatic black and add some yellow oxide, and that way you'll get your bases. And then when you have your yellow oxide going up to ultramarine blue, you're going to have your highlight colors in here. I hope that helps. If this is not at all what you were asking, if you can send me another message and just be a little bit more detailed as to the scene that you're painting. And then now this comment was sent to me about 3 weeks ago, so I have so many to go through. And if you did send me a comment, and if it's been a month and I haven't gotten to it, you don't need to resend it. It's just I've got seriously, I've got pages and pages and pages of questions that you guys have been sending me, and I love the questions. Like, thank you so much. At least what it does is it helps me understand what you guys are looking for. I don't want to create videos that you guys aren't interested in. Let me know what you want to see, and if I have the skill set to do it, I'll do it. And if it's something where I don't know, you know I'm going to experiment and try it anyways. So please send your questions. Go to artplace.ca, click the contact link in the menu, and send me your questions. And remember, if you don't want your name mentioned online, make sure you put that in the comments, or just don't put your name. And in all the comments that I print off, I block out the email address, so your privacy is protected 100%. But if you don't mind me using your first name only, write that in the comment of the email, and then I'll just use your first name. Alrighty, so I would love to see your experiment on this. What to do is, because you can't post photos in YouTube, is to head on over to the private Facebook group. The description's in the link below, and post your pictures there just so we can see your color mixtures. And if you're already watching this in the Facebook group, yay. If you're watching this on my Facebook page, then head on over or you can even post your color sample on my Facebook page. But if you have your own blog or your own channel or whatever, just post the link to, don't spam the channel, but post the link to your experiment. If you did it as a video online, post the link to your channel so we can check out your video. Because I love posting pictures is great. Actually seeing you guys make the mixture, that's what, really makes me happy, because that way I can see how you're picking up your colors. And as you're mixing, and then you say, oh, I really like this. And then I'll be able to see, yeah, that's because she did this, this, and this. So if you do it on video, that's great. You can even post your video in the Facebook group as well, showing your mixtures. All right, you guys, I will let you go. I'm going to clean up, and I'm going to do another video like this using a different mixture, because I have a funny feeling that once I do these brown mixtures, I'm going to be getting a few emails from you guys because of the brown mixtures. It comes to painting dark skin, painting, let's say I'm thinking, okay, painting a sheltie, painting a horse, what else? Painting a black bear. And a black bear isn't truly a black bear because a black bear has brown and blue tints to it. Painting barn board. What else is brown? Painting brown hair. I'm looking around the house. I'm looking at my plants. Painting a brown pot. Painting terracotta. I like to see you guys experiment painting terracotta. So I think I'm going to try I'll do maybe 3 more videos painting different brown mixtures. And then I'll hold off for a bit, wait for some feedback to come in, what you guys are asking me about the browns. And then if you guys want to see more, I will do more. If not, I will progress to the next question. Alrighty, so until I see you next time, stay inspired.